And once again, I want to say greetings to each and every one of you, Aquaba, and welcome. Welcome to another round of Show Me the Money. This is our Friday morning broadcast here on the West Coast. And with Show Me the Money, Dr. Steph joins me 2 times a month. And we look at what is happening in our world. We look at finance, money. We look at how we can fulfill our dreams in a very realistic way in a capitalist society. Today's date is Friday. It is the 18th of July, 2025 in the Western calendar. This corresponds to the year 6265 in the Kemetic calendar, to which we've realigned our cultural clock. Welcome to the seventh millennium. You have found your family in a peaceful place here on LIB Radio, LIB TV, here on livinginblack.com. And we are live and direct. Let me just cue me up, and I am on the screen talking to you, our listening audience today. I hope you are in beautiful spirits, and let me welcome to the stage our guest today. As every other Friday, she is with us here. Dr. Steph is in the house. Welcome to you, Dr. Steph. How are you today? I have you up on the screen. Let me try this one more time. Let me add you to the stage, and apparently Dr. Steph is glitched right now, and she will be joining us here in just a second as soon as she gets her camera back in position. And on that note, there she is. Dr. Steph is in the house, and welcome. I hope you can hear me. Bear with me. She is in Jamaica, I believe, and that things are sometimes a little more difficult to tune in from JA, as we do understand. Dr. Steph. There we go. I heard a sound.
To hear me?
I do hear you. Your mouth is not moving, but I can hear your voice. Okay, bear with us. It does take a moment sometimes
Yes,
in
and
Jamaica.
what I'm doing is I'm closing out a bunch of tabs on my computer.
There you go. And I do see your voice. Your
Yes,
picture is okay
I
now.
see that there's a situation here.
And while you are doing that, let me go ahead and
All
introduce
right,
the
how's
program.
that?
It sounds great. Let me just take a
Better?
moment. Yes, yes, yes. I'm going to introduce the program to our listening audience. Today, our subject, financing the dream, how to fund our global village vision. Today on LIB Radio, our topic is from vision to capital, funding models for diaspora development in Africa. For those who follow social media, we can see more and
Let
more
me see, I'm moving
examples.
closer to the,
We can see more and more examples of Africans, including those from the diaspora, building residential communities on African soil. Today, Dr. Steph joins the broadcast to share her experiences and examples of just how we can fund our visions of Kujichagulia village across our Pan-African future. In an increasingly interconnected world, the idea of a Kujichagulia village represents a vision of self-determination and shared prosperity, collaboration, and mutual support of Africans across borders. However, turning this vision into reality requires not only ambition, but also the financial resources to make it happen. On today's broadcast, Dr. Steph will share the various ways in which individuals and organizations can fund such dreams, from traditional financing methods to innovative approaches that leverage technology and global networks. Join us as we uncover the strategies, challenges, and opportunities that come with financing the dream of a more connected and prosperous world. I hope you had time over that long introduction to put everything into place. Dr. Steph, are you there? We're patient. She may just have a lag in the time between we connect, or it may be she needs to just reconnect it all. Dr. Steph, we are patiently waiting. Okay, I'm not hearing anything. You're muted right now. Dr. Steph, your microphone is not on at all. Okay, we do have a very long lag time between myself and her. Unfortunately, we will not be able to continue. I can't hear you at all. Dr. Steph. And we're going to keep on trying, keep on trying. I'm going to have you pull yourself out of the mix and relaunch the program if you can. And hopefully that will get you a good connection with me. I'm going to pull her out of the mix and I'll have her relaunch that show again. And on today's program, it is critical that we got to talk. We got to have a deep conversation about what we are going to do with regard to these Kujichagulia villages. We have to decide what we are going to do. I say we go ahead and build the villages, that we all take a part in it. If you imagine yourself ultimately in inhabiting Kujichagulia villages, these are going to be wellness resorts, and we're going to be growing food, growing herbs for distribution around the world, traditional African medicine, all of the above. If you can imagine any part of that, I'm asking you to bring your imagination forward and let's collaborate. Let's cooperate. Now, I'm going to put Dr. Steph, okay, she's not connected right now. She's going to reconnect, and we're going to do the best we can to get her through to the broadcast for today. Meanwhile, you and I are sitting here just looking at each other. Let me double check with my listening audience and see who I do have in the house today. If you are in the house, we'd love to hear from you. I'm not seeing anyone in the house, but there are a few numbers in the house. And bear with me, I apologize, but sometimes, you know, especially when you're dealing with places like Jamaica, sometimes the internet can be, not always, but sometimes the internet can be quite problematic to connect with. But hopefully we will have Dr. Steph with us in just a second. And here, let me do this as well. And let me connect the various pages to our stream today. We are broadcasting live on rumble.com. And we are also broadcasting live on Facebook.com, as well as we are live on YouTube today.com. So Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, YouNow, we are live and direct with you. And we're going to get Dr. Steph in here any minute now. Let me try this one more time. And she's really unfortunate, just having a hard time connecting. I may have to just do a Zoom with Dr. Steph. And then I can replay the Zoom video that we do record, because according to Kitty, her voice, her input is important as part of this LIB radio family. So we're going to work it out. Bear with us. We had this problem 3 weeks ago when we connected with Dr. Steph, but it wasn't nearly so bad. And she was able to correct whatever errors were there on her side in Jamaica. So we're going to keep going. I'm going to go into some talking points that I had put together for today's conversation because we've addressed this before. Talking points first, understanding the financial needs of a global vision. Based upon our extensive experience on this subject, we are going to be talking about the unique financial requirements of projects and initiatives that aim to create a global impact, including the importance of accurate financial planning and forecasting. Now, I'm involved in a couple of other projects in the background that are intending to have an impact on a global scale. It's not easy. It is not easy, especially when you and I have to start from such a position of deficit. Every time we have to restart from a position of deficit, every time we have to restart, we have to go into debt. We should have a long-term group behind African people on this planet. And there are groups on this planet that have the resources to make things happen. Our key is to plant this seed, this particular seed called Kujichagulia villages. What does that term Kujichagulia mean? It means self-determination. We determine the village. We determine the local laws and rules and how the culture will be promoted within the village. We determine where our food is largely grown. It's going to be tough. But at the same time, I say we, you and I, have the capacity to put this together. And we should go ahead and put this together. Exploring funding options for entrepreneurs. In this, we will discuss the range of funding sources available to entrepreneurs, from self-funding and bootstrapping to venture capital, angel investors, and crowdfunding. Those are all very good sources of locating the capital to do our most ambitious projects. So we are going to do it. We are going to do it. We've done it before. We did it for 4 years, more than 4 years. We built these villages, but we built them on shaky ground. I'm not going to call the owners of these properties shaky. No, they were anything but shaky. They were pretty good people, pretty solid people to be able to acquire the land and give us permission to be on that land in the first place was not at all a shaky position. So I am once again going to try to see if we can get Dr. Stephanie on. I do see her picture, and let's see if you and I can hear her voice. Welcome, Doc.
Hey, I had this broken into 5-part series for us to get down to the nitty gritty. I said the show is set up to be too rich, too rich. So, of course, I had to have technical difficulties today. How are you? Can you hear me any better?
I hear you much better. Let's just hope there is
Yes.
no lag
Okay.
time.
Okay. All right. All right.
Well, with the long lag
excited,
time, I want you to just go ahead into it and
about
talk
this
for an extended period.
and actual land. Okay. Perfect, perfect. And, when we talk about the village and the idea, that's really where you begin with the land, right? And what it is that you have conceived for that land. You start working on that, large, large conceptual program that you've put together. And then you begin to understand how much of the land is required and how the land is already regulatory wise as well as environmentally wise able to be the hub for this development that you're thinking about creating, right? So that makes you think about things like, what is the water situation? Are there utilities available? Is there road infrastructure available? Are there those kinds of access points available, ingress and egress? What state is the land currently in, and what is required to move it into a pre-development phase? But more importantly, what is the development? What's the footprint of that land so that you can put together the budget? Because you can't raise capital until you understand your cost. And there are several iterations of refining the cost. So in the beginning, you come up with what we call is a WAG, a wild, ass guess, but
Mm.
with some level of experience, right? And you do that by trying to get, well, what are construction costs? What are land costs? What are infrastructure costs? What are kind of these costs? So you get these high level budgets that you began to align as you're putting together this puzzle of what it is that you're planning to create. And so as you begin to get all of these costs identified, then you begin to understand what type of capital stack you're putting together, because there's different sources of capital for different portions of that particular puzzle that you're assembling, right? So you want to understand where are all the different folks that we're going to go to for these pieces of capital, because there are going to be some other benefactors in everything that we're creating. And then you get to the biggest part. Who are my end users? And what are their costs to either buy commercial property, buy residential property, operate businesses? What are the costs that they need to be able to manage in order to participate in this overall development plan that's being produced? And are
Oh,
those costs reasonable for those types of homes that require only, investors? That's the only person that could pay for the end product, or are we producing something where we are able to have prices that are 250,000, under $500,000 for a residential unit or lower, right? But until we know what the costs are, we can't begin to get to those particular numbers. But once we get the numbers, then we start understanding who is my audience, who's interested and willing and want to express what it is they're looking for. I'm a business person. Well, what kind of business am I looking to open? Because that's going to inform the type of infrastructure that's necessary. Because if I want to open a restaurant, then I have to have a certain commercial infrastructure that is different than somebody that wants to open a retail store. And that needs to be determined before. Because once you build, if you build urban and you build dense communities, you don't want to go in after the fact and attempt to figure out how to make the spaces work for the intended uses. So it's understanding all of these things from the beginning. And that's where we are. And I think that really what I did was I organized a thought process of first really digging deep into the vision. What are all the elements of the vision that we need to look at and add a dollar amount next to? So we want to understand, what's the land acquisition cost? and what's the legal process to acquire that land? What's the legal form? Because then that's going to begin to let us know the type of legal team that needs to be procured, because that's part of our legal fees, because you're going to have not only your land use attorneys, but you're going to have your infrastructure and all of that. If you have to go through any type of entitlements or a permitting process, are there building standards, all of those things that have to be determined. But there's also entity structures that have to be focused, which have to be put together, have to be developed, because they're going to be based upon the type of capital sources, because you can't get the capital if you're not structured in the proper ways for the type of capital that you're seeking to get. And so that's why all of this becomes a real, integrated process, because each one is connected to another part of this process. So when you're looking at the land, and then, are there additional bodies that are their own sovereigns that you may have to deal with? Are there chiefs that control particular villages where these particular assets are placed? And what type of relationships have to be fostered and structured with, say, independent sovereigns? And then is there a need to have different type of relation structures with government, land offices? What type of documentation is necessary to facilitate a transaction, right? And then from there back to that bigger conversation. Now that we've got the how we get control of the actual physical land, what type of infrastructure is necessary? Water systems. Are you putting in your own energy? How are you going to create the power? How are you going to sanitize? What type of necessary? And then are there any approaches that are unique? Are you looking at latest technology? Are you looking at wind technology? Are you looking at solar technology? Are you looking at alternative sources to not only recycle and preserve, irrigation systems? What type of open space conditions are you setting? What kind of policies are you those things? Because then you can start considering, all right, how are we going to physically construct the real estate? Are we going to use, stick homes, hut homes,
Mhm.
these villages, what type of models are we using? Are we looking at fractional ownership models, complete ownership models? Are there barriers to foreign ownership? What are those barriers? How must one be? Is it necessary that they be part of a partnership with someone that's local in the particular, country, in the particular area, all of these things? And then what are the additional kind of lifestyle necessities in order to occupy this? What type of health, what type of wellness, what type of educational infrastructure needs to be allocated in all of this planning? And where must those things be located within this master plan that's being put together? How will this community access additional communities? Where is it in as relates to the grid that it occupies around the sphere, that it's not only influencing its micro area, but also the macro conditions around this particular village? And then how is it that people get access to food? How are they going to eat? Are you going to include that as part of this overall plan? So then how do you structure those? Are those going to include farming cooperatives? Are you planning to uh, have processing facilities that manufactures, kind of how far into the ecosystem of agriculture and food sustainability are you going to go as you build out this particular model? And what is the initial community size, so that you can start to think of it in terms of phases? How do you begin to phase this type of structure and development in such a way that the infrastructure requirements, at least a base level of them, are able to be met, while a phased approach to being able to gain occupants, right? People who buy properties, people who are willing to invest in the vision, all of those folks, bringing them to the table and being able to have them commit, because when you go for a ground up development project, these are not projects that happen overnight. Typically, developments, many of the projects that I've worked on have been a 10, in some case 15-year process, dependent upon the level of entitlements that are required, the amount of legal work that is required before the physical building of the structures begin. By the time you see someone come out of the ground, they're finished all the hard part. You
Mm.
know, it's like when we hit podium level, that's the icing. It was building the cake part, all of that stuff that, nobody knew was happening behind the scenes. That's where all the money is going. All of those folks who are working.
All right. Well, let's check the lag time right now. Hold up your hand when you hear me talking. Okay. You hear me talking right now? Okay, great. So it looks like our lag time is gone, and that is good to get out of the way. You had mentioned about some of these funding sources. Can we discuss the range of funding sources that are available to entrepreneurs, including self-funding, bootstrapping, venture capital, angel investors, crowdfunding?
Yes, all of those are options
Mm-hmm.
for your particular project. And so, what happens is when you begin your venture, um, the dependent upon the size and scale of the venture determines the type of capital that you're looking for. Okay. In the real estate development sphere, this part, what you have to identify is a team that has the qualifications to execute on this particular business plan. And so, developers, not all developers develop the same things. And so, the ability to get capital is determined by what the developer has an expertise in. My
Mm-hmm.
expertise, for example, is in mixed use development. I do urban infill projects. So that are typically up to, you would say, a mid rise in terms of height. And typically, I develop vertically integrated, mixed use, commercial conversions, those type of assets. I can develop single family communities, but for me, developing a single family community would be like asking me to sit and watch paint dry. It would drive me mad because it's not at the pace and scale that what it is that I do requires, because you have to be all in at one time. So everything must go in accordance to do an urban infill integrated development. So what happens is the capital that's going to come in is you're going to have equity capital that comes in at a portion of the development project, because that's where you pay for all of the upfront studies and the whole business plan that has to be put together for the development. So you're going to spend 10 to 15% of the initial funds that make up the project towards all of the development plans and all of the engineering and all of those particular work that get you from
Mm-hmm.
idea to having something that is close to tangible, right? But you're going to get money in tranches, because you're not going to get all of the money that you need to get to a finish line, because the line is a long lead of activities. And so, in looking at in the development scheme, you're looking at both equity that typically comes from funds like pension funds, those kinds of institutions that invest in these long lead items that, when if you were a fireman, if you were a teacher, you have a pension. Those funds are invested in real estate projects like this as a way to ensure that 10, 15 years down the line, there's a certain return on those funds that's aimed to meet the needs of those pension requirements. So pension funds, family offices, large institutions make up the first piece, that equity piece to get you going. After that, once you get to a stage in the development where you actually have approved plans, where you can actually pull building permits, at that point is where the debt capital enters. the stage.
Hmm.
And the debt capital is the final construction funding. And that funding is either permanent funding or it's funding that's temporary for the duration of the construction and has to have a takeout mechanism in place. So, if, for example, if you are building homes that are going to be sold off, as each buyer buys their property, they are performing the takeout of the construction financing that was put in place to finance the development, right? And depending upon the time horizon for those fundings being taken out, then that determines the type of capital at that particular level. So you're dealing with a number of, larger institutions and organizations. You're dealing with sophisticated, your real estate team, your development team have to have deep domain knowledge in the area. The developers, the architects, the engineers, they have to have very specified expertise in the asset class that you're working. Otherwise, you won't be able to utilize them for funding because the funding is going to be based on the team's expertise in developing the type of asset that you're looking to develop. And so that's kind of how
Hmm.
you go from the backward to that point.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. We have today, as our topic is financing the dream, how to fund our global village vision. Dr. Steph is joining us as she said she's broken this up into various broadcasts. So we're going to be revisiting this subject again in the very near future, as we have talked about it dozens of times over the years. We are serious and we are moving, but we have to gather very significant financial resources to be able to pull this off. So, looking at this critical role of financing in securing the dream, let's say, what are some of the early steps that one would take navigating this pathway? It's a complex pathway.
Yes, the first thing that you need to do is you need to have a feasibility plan developed.
Mm,
And so a feasibility plan is going to cost you somewhere in the range between 250 to $300,000 because you need to have several experts weigh in to that plan. And the weigh in that they have to put requires them to do billable hours. This is not, you know, quick 15-minute people have to actually they have licenses and things that they have to respond in a certain way, to these different initial inquiries because the team would have to travel to the site. They're going to have to conduct a physical site inspection. They're going to have to identify the local boots on the ground resources and understand, based on this overall plan, who are the most qualified and available players to participate. And when you're going through this, you have to source through more than one option because again, these are, high level significant projects and you can't risk just having one perspective when you're talking about having to defend that and having to go to market. You must, at every step of the way, be thorough and detailed as you're gaining information because you have to move from the WAG to a real numbers. The numbers by the time before you start talking to investors, those numbers have to be real numbers.
yeah.
There's
Oh,
severe consequences for them to being wrong.
yeah. Now, the consequences for them being wrong, are they different in the let's say an emerging market country than they are in the United States? I would imagine it's a little more difficult and a lot more greasing the machine to get it done in this country.
It's a bunch of things. So it's all of that and then some. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Um,
conditions are also set based on the sources because you have to understand
hmm.
again, if we follow the money, you look at, well, who are the investors? So right now, why is it that China is investing all over the world in all of these different countries by coming in and developing the infrastructure and then picking out the Tony assets that they want to control. They want to control the ports. They want to control certain, locations. They identify kind of the Tony areas that they want to control, and they go about setting up infrastructure deals because infrastructure is a significant investment. And then they control that infrastructure in order to recoup their costs. I'll give you a case in point. Last Sunday, I'm in Kingston, and we were going to Runaway Bay so that I could look at a property, right? And I hadn't gone across the toll road since I've been here because I haven't been driving on my own. But I've gone past that toll road at least maybe say a year and a half ago. The toll road is now 4,500 Jamaican dollars each way to go past. That's the equivalent of a $60 to drive on the toll road to go from Kingston to Runaway Bay, round trip.
Why is it so expensive, in your opinion?
The Chinese built the toll road, and now they are
Mm-hmm.
collecting the fee from the people to pay them back for that investment.
The equivalent of $60, from my understanding, for a Jamaican would be double that if we weigh that in our dollars.
Exactly. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So
So
what
are
does
there
that
people
tell you?
traveling the toll road?
Who,
Are there people traveling the toll road?
not everybody. And the
Mm-hmm.
alternative road is the take you another half an hour, but it's the beat up pothole, you know, off the beaten path. And so,
Mm-hmm.
but it makes you calculate depending
Mm-hmm.
upon how far you need to go beyond that toll road will definitely make you consider, hey, is there an alternative path? You know, if you had to think about that $60, like that's like if you flew into Kingston by mistake and you needed to get to our resort, and our resort is closer to Montego Bay. You now have added almost another, $60 onto just your airfare to get to the destination, and that's nothing else.
Mm.
So it's significant. And so these are the kinds of consequences that happen, especially when you have governments who are willing to compromise the citizens because they took the first take. Now we know that there was something in there that would have mitigated some of those costs, like government could have contributed something because they received something. But
Mm-hmm.
this is a case where instead of them contributing what they received on the front end of the infrastructure impact fees to mitigate the cost, they prefer to pass it on to the users, the
Yeah.
citizens. So then that means that only a certain set of users are going to be able to have access. And you got to think about this. If you don't control the infrastructure that's being built next to your village, and you're building a
Mm-hmm.
village that you think is in an area, but somebody comes in and builds the infrastructure, and now in order to get home to the property that you've already built, they now have an extra $60 to $100, the equivalent of toll just to go to work every day now. Do you think that's going to impact your ability to get people to buy in your community? Absolutely. They can't afford to
Absolutely.
live there. Don't you
Mm-hmm.
think you need to understand these things before you decide where you're building a community?
That is true.
Absolutely. Right. These are the reasons. See, people go into real estate development, and the reason that most people fail, that's why they don't get funded. They fail losing their own money because nobody's going to put money in you if you don't know what you're doing, because the complexities of all the things that must go right are so significant. And when I tell people that, imagine leading portfolios worth billions of dollars and being able to say that as a project executive, every project I have led has come within its scope, within its schedule, and within its budget. In fact, I've saved money. That is saying something. That is
That's
saying
true.
something,
That is
you
so
know.
very true.
And so
And
and
it
so 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 understanding that it's that kind of level of intensity, and every day something is going wrong potentially
mm-hmm.
at so
And
many
again,
levels.
it puts into context the long term ramifications of us as Africans being dependent on China. South Korea was building homes in Ghana that were uh, unacceptable in so many ways. America, European Union, for us being dependent upon others to do for us as Africans is, of course, very problematic. Of course, as African Americans, I'm not talking about you, I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about them cousins of ours. As African Americans, we could actually step up, step in, and take over many of these responsibilities, but there doesn't seem to be the primary motivation.
Well, I'm seeing it in two ways, though. I'm not seeing it as much, Keity. If I were to look about it demographically speaking, which is really interesting, I I don't see it truly when I speak with my Boomer generation. I'm just gonna, call it as it is, right? But
Mm-hmm.
where I do see it is I'm seeing it with the millennials, and and and,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm also seeing, because there's a wealth transfer
Mm-hmm.
between boomers now to their heirs. And from the lens that I'm wearing with the structure of my family office, and kind of in these conversations with who are the billionaires building the next $1 trillion companies, I'm beginning to see them and how it is they're poised to move, and they're moving a little bit differently in some ways. And it's going to bubble up, I think, where it may not all be completed, as you say, by some of the folks that had the visions, but if they get the
Mm-hmm.
vision to be adopted by enough folk, the vision will come to fruition. And it won't, I don't think it's going to take as long, because what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing is some of these new wealthy, they're not interested in investing the way their parents did. They're not interested in being, kind of leaned into some of the things that their parents were. So they really want to kind of change the world in some ways. They have social impact initiatives, because although they've been privileged in many instances, they've managed to have other friends who maybe not are so privileged. They've traveled the world, and they've been able to see things with their own eyes, and they don't agree with everything that they've seen. And so some of them are looking to upset the apple cart, and they have the resources to do so.
Do they have the time to do so? Because
Well, this is the thing, is
unfortunately,
they don't all have all of the expertise. So this is
mm-hmm.
why they are looking for the experience. You know what I mean? This is where the marriage, this is why I see so much opportunity in the two
Mm-hmm.
areas that I occupy: wellness and wealth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Between my wellness resorts and my family office technology that I've created with the 100-year family plan, family office plan, a solution to create sustainable wealth over a 100-year plan. Those two assets that I am focused on, I see that it's their season, right? And in that, it's allowing me to have these conversations, because these are the same folks who basically frequent the resorts that I'm creating, right? That's why I had to know my customers. You have to be in conversation with them and understand, but at the same time, understanding where the opportunities are because of what it is that's informing some of their interest and decisions. Because they're interested in the kinds of projects that I'm talking about, because I'm talking about the type of projects that make social impact. And I'm not talking about them, I've already been executing on them. You know what I'm saying? So I have projects lined up. I have budgets for those projects. I have business plans. Since I've been here in Jamaica, in the last 90 days, I put together at least 7 business plans and 5 community investment opportunities that I have structure, budget, and intention already ready to go, right? The only thing next is to start writing checks in short order with the rest of the team, getting on deck, right? But we're teed up and ready to execute.
Awesome, awesome. Congratulations on those accomplishments. We do appreciate that. Let me double check and make sure anybody double checking or anybody checking in with us have any messages. I don't see any messages. hopefully we are building up the audience from the snafu at the beginning of the program. So we're glad to have people joining us. I am today with Dr. Steph. We are talking about financing our dreams. The past, no, this is yesterday's. I'm looking at yesterday's program. Now, this is what I did yesterday, because this kind of brings to mind this question that I asked of you. Do we have time to put this together? Because as you know, the baby boomers are in flux. I think the baby boomers did their best. They recovered a lot for us as African people on this planet. But at the same time, the baby boomers made terrible, terrible mistakes. I'm a baby boomer myself, so I own up to the mistakes we saw our generation make. But according to the 400-year timeline we put together in yesterday's broadcast, just one portion of this I'm going to point out. We're talking about the reckoning. This is a period from 2040 forward. The reckoning, a critical point where sustainability efforts fail due to over consumerism, leading to environmental and social decline. Sustainability fails due to over consumerism. The problem becomes with a new generation coming in. Are they being brought in with the idea of sustainability, self-determination, and these other positive aspects of being a social group? Or is this new generation coming in with TikTok consumerism as its primary motivation?
Both.
So can we cash in on that
We
and
have
make the
both.
best of it?
We have all of the above and everything in between. I was
Mm-hmm.
talking to someone about leadership, and it hit me because the leader was complaining about having part of their team that is not efficient or effective, kind of lazy, right?
Mm,
And what I realized is that the leader didn't see that his own laziness is the reason that he's attracting lazy team members, right? It's his
mm,
blind spot. And so again, you attract who you are. So, yes, we're going to have those TikTokers, but maybe they'll start spreading the message. We need them, right? Yes, we have the
mm-hmm.
ones who are interested in owning the farm, learning how to farm, looking at sustainable products in the innovation phase, looking at how they can improve upon the agricultural process, bringing their brilliance to the table. There's
Mm-hmm.
those that want to be masters of finance. We need them. There's those that want to be masters in law. We need them. There's those that, want to launch new products. We need them. Yes, we do need those that want to buy the products too. We need them. So we need an entire ecosystem for it all to come together. And so it's not the point of saying, oh, this is what X is doing. It's about saying, empowering X to do that for the benefit of the ecosystem. It's like, okay, if that's your superpower, then you're going to manage the TikTok for all of the farmers market so that the exposure to all of the brands that are being developed can be developed, because over here we're producing it and we don't have time to be over on TikTok and doing that. But we need somebody that knows how to be over there and tell our narrative and then point that audience to us so that the people that want to consume what it is we're creating have the opportunity to know that we exist, so that they can consume what it is that it is we're creating, right? And that's how this engine, this ecosystem begins to form, and that's how it becomes sustainable. Is somebody has to always have a desire to consume what it is you're creating. If you don't have somebody that has the desire to consume it, then your creation ends up being wasted, because it must be
Mm-hmm.
consumed by someone. If it's not being consumed by someone, it's just creation without a full purpose.
Mm-hmm. Good points that you make. And this analysis we did yesterday tended to follow the generations. So first, of course, we talked about this period. Uh, here, one second, I'm in my notes. This period of what we call the reckoning beginning around 2040. But then, according to a bunch of analysis we put together, the next era would follow by about a birth generation. And that next era is called the dystopian era. And essentially, that is all of this consumerism, hyper consumerism, the greed, all the avarice and everything that had happened, including the possibility of nuclear bombs going off, has essentially destroyed much of the top layer of the planet. I mean, if you and I look at images of Gaza today and this bitter hatred, which has persisted since 1948 between the Jews and their Arab neighbors, there is a possibility that that could happen to the entire world. The villages you and I are proposing would be the anecdote or an antidote to that kind of a life. Your
Oh, it
kind.
is. Oh man, you are so on it. So it's so funny. I had a quick call. A girlfriend called me over the weekend to ask a question about a creation she's working on. But before she finished her conversation, she made a point of saying, "Girl, so much is happening in the U.S. I hope you know, me and my family, we planning to come get with you in Jamaica if
Mm-hmm.
things go south." And I started laughing. I said, "Oh, okay, so Noah's Ark kind of makes sense, huh?"
That does.
you
It
know,
makes a
after
lot of
after
sense.
all, after all, you know what I mean? And so she was one of the ones that, has been like from the beginning. I already know that you've been planning these wellness resorts. I already know the depth of your vision. Like I know. But more importantly, I've already watched how everything that you've planned has manifested. So I'm betting on you anyway, right? So she's always been that one along the journey. It's like, I'm with you. I already know how you roll, right? And so I told her, I said, yes, you and your family, all you have to do is call. I'm on my way to the airport and you guys are good. But some other folks, the numbers
Mm-hmm.
don't work no more. The
Yeah.
numbers don't work no more, and that's by design because, not everybody it can go with you, and some people you find when you're looking at this advancement, it's what you're saying. In essence, you asked me in a nice way saying, oh, is it the TikToker? Oh, is it the this person that's overly consuming or whatever? And it's like, well, we're going to attract all of them to some degrees. Some people are going
Mm-hmm.
to attract more of certain types than others of certain types, right? From my lens, as I look at global villages and the need for sustainability, I understand that I needed to pull together a system, and a system
Mm-hmm.
has many pieces. And so within that system, if I understand your truth about your passion, I can literally find a place within the system where you can do what you love, the best that you love every single day. And if you bring that excellence, that A game of doing what you love every single day to the system, then the system is going to work. Because I'm going to find somebody else that feels that way about every single role within the system so that the system gets
Mm-hmm.
to run excellence, because everybody that's in their position are playing a position that they would play whether they were getting paid or not. I don't have to tell them to
Mm-hmm.
want to be the best in it. They want to be the best in it because they love it that passionately.
Well, that really becomes our challenge. How do we convince those who you and I know they exist? We know they exist.
No,
There
so
was a
no, listen to what your word choice. Your word choice is very, very important. You don't have to convince. You don't have to convince, you have to vibrate. When you are if when you are living what you believe, you will vibrate and they will come to you. I can't I Man, I can't even tell you the stuff that's happening right at this moment yet. We'll be making so many updates, but it's all about the clarity in the assignment, and the vibration is get busy, getting it done, because the people are not going to come. Nobody sits back and goes, oh my, that would be like you identify the land and the furniture company back up and start delivering furniture. And you're like, we're not ready for the furniture yet. We don't we're not, we have no place to put the furniture. We don't have structures yet. And why would we buy the furniture now and put it in containers? It'll be outdated. It'll be molded. It'll be everything. This is not the right stage for the furniture. So again, you won't have to convince them when you get busy executing on the vision. And next time we're together, that's kind of why I said I broke this up in a little bit 5 segments, because next time I'm going to really go a little bit deeper in some of the financing mechanisms, but what you need to have before you can even talk to that financing mechanism, because I think that's the disconnect. People think, oh, I want to go get capital. It's like, all right, then you probably need to have a minimum of about $150,000, because you have to have legal structures that are in place. You have to have all of these other things, because capital is not writing a check to you. They're writing a check to an entity that's set up to receive their check. So if you have not done that work to have that entity in place, you're never going to get a check. It's a pipe dream. And then if you're in different jurisdictions, you got to have legal counsel where you are, and you must have legal counsel where the jurisdictions are that you're looking to do business. And then you must have legal in other areas, because just because you're doing business in an area does not mean that that's a proper place that an investor is willing to let them hold your money for the project. Sometimes you have to structure offshore from even those locations. So that's another layer of structure. That's another legal team. That's more legal fees. And you have nothing yet to the average Joe Blow that has no clue. And somebody was asking me yesterday about that. Should we even bother with a friends and family round, realizing that oftentimes, those of us that come from families that really don't understand big development and projects don't have really the kind of resources necessary. They'll rather spend it on helping somebody else who's already a billionaire extend their billions, rather than understanding where they could have a bigger position in something if they help create some billion-dollar companies. If you help create some billion-dollar companies, you're probably going to get a chance to make some of those billions yourself. But they're too brainwashed to be the consumers to make the other billionaires rich. So innovators have to go through bootstrapping, in really some. When people go back and trace what it was it required me to do to deliver on this vision, it's going to be like, wow, like how could you possibly, right? But it's okay, because that journey at the same time, because I'm a fixer and I'm an innovation creator, I'm seeing where all the gaps are for all of the businesses that I'm helping. Right. And so I'm mitigating those gaps for them, taking away these unnecessary pains. That's why I set the intention for 10 million companies to 5 million in revenues over the next 10 years, because I understand what's necessary to get from 0 to 1 million, from 1 million to 3 million, from 3 million to 5 million. And I know that like I know my name. It's a formula. I know what the formula is. I know how to put the pieces in place to make that formula produce that outcome. Right. Over and over and over again. And so that's the kind of understanding that needs to be in this development project, is the people that are executing, they know what they know so well that nobody, you know what I mean? They know it, they've lived it. I lived all of the development projects. When people talk to me about infrastructure and I say, well, if you know LA, are you familiar with the Grove at Farmers Market? And they go, yes. I'm like, oh, then do you know Park La Brea across the street and the Palazzo and Palazzo East? Are you familiar with 3rd Street? Are you familiar with 6th Street between Fairfax and La Brea in LA? Yes. All right. Imagine doing a development project where you had to control the streets, do the infrastructures, upgrade the signals, plus deal with all of these particular public spaces, private spaces, share the street with Caruso because you're doing a project at the same time, who gets to have pedestrian access at one time, all of these different things, right? And because you bought some land that was part of open space for Park La Brea, you also have to finish a project inside of Park La Brea to their satisfaction to make all of these particular deals go good and end up where they need to end up at the end of the day. And so those were my projects. Those were the things that I did. I lived that. You know what I mean? So it's not something that I have to ask about. I have to wonder about. I know what that looks like. And I saved $1 million cost overrun on that project at the same time, which means that I meet deadlines that had been failed when I jumped on the team in my first 90 days on the job. I saved $1 million cost overrun on that project. So again, you know what I'm saying? These kinds of projects and the intimate details are the same level of intensity that's necessary for all of our businesses, for all of our perspective. But I think that there are some people that, although they lack that level of experience, they have the desire to produce that type of social impact. They're not just talking about me. They're looking at how we. And so because of that change in perspective, that that is what I'm holding on to as a possibility for progress, because with they recognize where they have gaps, and they want to be led. So they're open to be coached and guided. And so that means that we have the opportunity where you have win-win connectivity. If I can pour into some young people the over 40 years of high level multi-billion dollar organization, Fortune 500 to multi-billion dollar, if I could pour in my knowledge and experiences to the next generation, and especially on the continent, are you kidding me? We'll own it all back. We'll own it all back. And it ain't going to take more than one generation. We will own it all back. We'll own it all
All
back.
right. There's a couple of questions, comments in the chat on Rumble. I see Nguvu has joined us. And Nguvu, welcome to you. He says, Sawubona, I got in late, but I'm wondering about taxes in the countries we're talking about. How much are they in general? Are there breaks or incentives? And when we're talking about the Kujitagalia villages, the countries specifically we are targeting will be Ghana, Kenya, Uganda will be the first three targeted countries. There will be other villages, but Ghana, Kenya, and Uganda, where we aim to set up our primary principal investments. Do you know anything about the taxes in those areas?
Oh, that's a great question. So here's what happens is that countries that want to receive investment also put themselves in position for investment. And countries that want developers to bring in big projects tend to do things like pass legislation that facilitates that type of investment. So, for example, if you've heard of the term special economic zone, a
That
special
is a
economic
very
zone
important
is
term.
what Dubai used to become Dubai. All right. A special economic zone is the same legislation that the Cayman Islands use to model themselves after Dubai. And I was an advisor to the special economic zone in the Cayman Islands. So imagine to come to Jamaica and knowing that Jamaica has enacted a special economic zone and theirs is a floating zone. Sometimes a special economic zone is a fixed zone where there's a designated area that they want to direct all the development. Sometimes it's a floating zone, which means the project has to meet the merits of a special economic zone, meaning it's taken in foreign investment, it's a certain size and scale, it's contributing to infrastructure, it's contributing to the overall ecosystem. There's all of these different variables. And within that agreement that you're structuring for your development is where you negotiate things like taxes. All of those things become the overall package. So to the person that's asking about taxes, you are looking at right now what a government's structure is. And you can Google that and find that answer out for whatever country that you're interested in looking at. I'm setting up family office structures that are based in initially Dubai in the free zone, and then behind Dubai, Singapore, Switzerland, some other key markets. And each market, I've taken the time to determine what the taxing environment is based upon the type of asset that's held. People that typically invest in many of these countries and other places, they don't invest as individuals. They're investing through different legal structures. And so depending upon, again, the regulatory environment in the country, and this is where I'm saying in the beginning, these are the things that you have to understand, because they're going to inform what kind of entities you're able to form and structure, which then informs what type of capital you're ready to take in, which then informs where the entities have to be, tied to, connected to, and all of these different variables. These are the things that have to be fleshed out. This is all of that upfront feasibility analysis that has to be put together before one can even determine. If I were to say to you, Kitty, how do you decide whether you should invest in Uganda, Kenya, or Ghana, and in what order? What is your variable that you're using to make that decision? And if you, it's what's driving that?
At this particular point, availability of the land. We have been
Okay.
invited to develop 500 acres in Ghana primarily. I have been to Kenya numerous times, and I'm a big fan of Kenya. And I know that land in Kenya is pretty reasonable. But then the third choice, land in Uganda, is very reasonable. And we do have an extensive group of people in Uganda that we'll be working with. So basically, land, the costs of developing the project, and then ultimately the cooperative network.
Absolutely. So then when you're looking at that, once you do a feasibility analysis on each of them, right? And you really
Mm-hmm.
understand what the cost of the land is, because until you know what the project is that you're putting on the land, sadly, you don't know if the land is a good value or not. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? You may think it's a good value, but you don't have enough information to validate, to confirm that it's a good value. If you buy land and you don't understand that the land is not buildable because there's other soils conditions, there's water issues, there's infrastructure issues, that by the time those infrastructure issues are resolved, or the cost to resolve those issues make the project no longer a feasible project. You know what I'm saying? So these are the things that inexperienced looking at a site are not able to reveal, is they don't understand. That's why, I have a group here that bought land here in Jamaica. They got a great deal. They thought it was so wonderful. It was, cheap. They whatever. But then when they learned that they had to spend money to start putting together a feasibility analysis, and that the land, what ran through the land was a water table that they would have to build to mitigate because it ran through their land. So the government will not put in any of that infrastructure. The cost of that infrastructure made the land unfeasible for them. So they lost their money because they didn't understand how to evaluate the land to determine if it is a good bargain or not. You know what I'm saying? So a feasibility study has to be created for each of these sites, understanding what they are based on what it is you want to do. And typically that's why, from the development standpoint, using these special economic zone and these other tools, what they do is typically it means that the land is obviously going to be free, but there's also going to be some way that if the developer has to invest in the infrastructure. So that's why if you go across the toll road, you're paying $60 to pay the Chinese back, because they put the money in, they were willing to put the money in up front, but somebody has to pay.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I typed in the chat for Nguvu to get his inquiry answered. What he could do is go to the Chamber of Commerce and Industry for that particular country to get these type of questions answered and I just as an example, I typed in the Kenya Chamber of Commerce and Industry, which we have worked with before when we went to Kenya in 2014, and that is kenyachamber.or.ke. So just look up, and for all 54 African countries that are part of the African Union, there is a Chamber of Commerce for each particular country, plus there is a African Chamber of Commerce and Industry that you connect, which is for the African Union, the entire continent.
Absolutely. There's an abundance of information available. You can answer almost any question except for the hard part. It's like, the hard part is how to take the information and make it into something that makes sense, that, is viable and is fundable, investable. That's where the challenge is. So, you know,
You are absolutely right.
yeah.
So we're going to begin to wrap things up. We did have a little bit of a late start, so we put that time on the end of the program. I'll go ahead and edit around it so we don't have that big clumsy start that we had today. But this is a very important topic, such that we are now committing. This is the second week to exploring this topic, and there will be several more weeks of how do we fund and finance the practicality of financing our own self-determination villages, Kujichagulia villages, our own wellness resorts, all very important for our people's destiny. Your final thoughts, and how can people maintain contact with you?
Absolutely. We're adding some additional touch points, but for now, uh, go to my LinkedIn profile and then just message me there, and then we can connect from LinkedIn. So it's linkedin.com and then it's Dr. Stephanie Ardrey, Ardrey. And you can find me there. That's probably the best way. We're trying to kind of redirect people at the moment to some sources, because we're on our initiative for the Innovation Venture Labs, and that intention is to help develop 10 million entrepreneurs over the next decade. And so for me to get my first 500,000 global entrepreneurs on deck, I am hunting and looking and finding. And thank you to some of you who have been sending me recommendations of entrepreneurs that should be considered for this opportunity. I'm looking globally. So for these entrepreneurs who are able to consider to contribute to the ecosystem. So, that's what it's all about. If you're a farmer, check out our organicfarmersglobal.com and register your farm, because we are sowing into our farmers as well. We're building a complete marketplace. We just need to get an idea of who you are, where you are, what you have, when you have it, how much of it you have.
Mm-hmm.
Those kinds of things. We just need the basics, please. Only the facts, please.
Yeah,
And where
just the
you might
fact.
benefit from some support. So just the facts, please, right? I'm only interested in a couple things. Who are your customers? Okay, if you don't know, we probably can help you figure out who your customers could be, should be. What kind of capacity do you have? And then from that kind of capacity, awareness, what kind of to have addressed as well, right? So those are kind of the three buckets that we sort you through. And from those buckets, then we come up with, a solution for you. So this is exciting. I'm happy. This is good. I'm excited to do this. So next week, we're going to kind of dig deeper into what the funding mechanisms look like. And, we're going
Mm-hmm.
to challenge you guys. So be ready. Come back. Be ready. Come ready. Come ready to make this happen, guys.
I
Here's your
like
call
that. I
to
love your
action. Let's
enthusiasm.
do it right
Let's
now.
do it.
Right now.
Awesome. Awesome.
Right
And
now. All
let's
right.
take advantage of all of the knowledge and wisdom that you and I, our people, have acquired along this long 400-year sojourn. Yes, much of that journey has been painful, has been cruel, but that's not what we are retaining. I personally, I'm retaining the best of what I encountered after having my parents and their parents suffer through much of the cruelties. In my generation, I was released from that pathway and put on a new pathway that guided me to the future, which is home, which is Pan African. And you know something, Doc? I believe that we Pan Africans have the greatest advantage for this planet for the future. That's
We
contrary to
do.
many people's belief, but I believe it's true. You believe it as well?
Yes, it's 100% true. We are the people who are being developed for this season right here, right now. Because there's a whole
That's
global
right.
shift from what we've seen, all of this zero sum, winner take all, lose, mentality. Now people understand that sustainability is the only way, which means that you and I can only create a win-win relationship in whatever type of way we choose to relate. Because if you lose something and I keep winning, the relationship is going to fail. It must be a relationship based in some type of equitable balance in terms of our intentions towards one another, how we work with one another, how we respect and treat one another. And that goes into everything else that you do with one another. And that's the season that is
Absolutely.
now. And I am so excited about it because I have been preaching that this day was going to come, and it is here. And I'm so happy to be here, able to play with it and in it. Yes, every day,
Awesome.
living my bliss. Yes.
Great, great, great. Well, we're going to keep moving forward. I thank you so much for what you what you bring every week to the program and what you brought this week. Yeah, we had a little trouble logging in, but it was well worth waiting for. Thank you, Doc.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. All right. See you. See you. Are we going next week or are we going to skip a week now?
Um, I think we probably going to get back on track. You let me know what the topic will be. Since you do have a series planned out, I think we can get right back on
Oh, it's
track.
going to
So
be the
we will
funding.
go
Let's go.
next week.
Then next week we're getting going deep in the money. That's next. So
Let's go
while
into
it's
the
fresh
money
on
then.
your mind, let's go into the money. All right.
Awesome,
All
awesome.
right. I'll see you
We'll
next
be
week.
talking next
Okay.
week, Doc. Peace
All right.
now.
Bye
And
bye.
on that note, I want to thank you all for tuning in today. It has been an exciting program. I hope you found it to be exciting. And Guvu, thank you for checking in. We appreciate you being a part of what we do here on LB Radio. I encourage everybody out there, if you listen to today's show, do hit the like button on your computer. Share the program if you would. Share the program with your circle of associates. How many of you in this family have brought up this topic of Kujichagulia villages among your circle of associates? How many? Well, now is the time to increase that dialogue and let's take it to another level. I do have the book. In case you want the book, you should get your hands on the book. It's got a little green on it, put a hole in it. But you should be on this as much as anyone else out here. Kujichagulia villages, a practical plan for self-determination. I encourage you, get the book. Take a look at the book. Read the book. Read it from cover to cover, then read it again. It's a real inexpensive book. It's only what, $12 or so? $10. You should get 3 copies of it for you and your 2 best friends with which you are planning to survive this dystopian period that we know is ahead. The reckoning will begin around 2040, and that is all of the negative things that we have been doing to other countries. The United States, I mean, not you and I, the United States has been doing to others. This reckoning will come home. The de-dollarization move will be firmly in place by 2040. You and I should have very firmly had our place in place and then work from there to continue to defend it for all that it's worth. So on that note, I think we had a good show today. I didn't even have to use my AK, as Ice Cube would say. Today was a good day. Here on your favorite, we aim to be your favorite. We are LIB Radio, LIB TV. We are living in black.com. Tell your friends to tell their friends that we have our own now. And we have been building this for some time. We really have been planning for some time to be successful with what we have, with what we do. So on that note, I'm going to try to get this music to cut on and take us out for the program for today. LIB Radio, LIB TV, living in black.com. I wish you all peace and prosperity to each and every one of you. Peace now.